Yo, what's up? It's Jimmy on from Glitchy Thumbs. In today's video, you're going to see character 1.4, the Nosestache Guy, being built in Buildbox. We fixed the issue for the very dark FBX file and outlines not working. If you want to see that video, click the link in the comments. It'll take you to part 1 and part 2 of the Blender video. Check that out. And let's get to the Buildbox video. I start with a new file, drag in our FBX, move the cube down, change the ground from grass to no ground, click character 1.4. In the scene, click edit, scroll down to our outline, change it from white to black. This is how I know that the 3D model is correct when I import it into Buildbox for the outline. But I still see an issue for the back of the character, and also his mouth is missing, which is incorrect because we fixed it in Blender, but it looks like I forgot to save the texture file. To double check this, you can see the texture in Buildbox on the right side. There isn't an extra location that's filled in. That's how you can have an idea of, okay, the texture is incorrect. This is probably an old texture file, because when you go into Blender, I expand the old texture file here. You can see that up close. You can think of it as there's 1, 2, 3 circles or ovals, if that's how you envision it. The one in Blender, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 circles or ovals. That's how I eyeballed everything and knew, okay, this is definitely a texture file issue. I saved this and resaved it over our previous texture file. You can create a new texture if you want. Maybe you want to have the texture with no mouth. That could actually be a feature instead of a bug. This is what I like. When you do certain things, don't think of it as a bug, but it could be a feature in your game, and how you use it is up to you, because there could be a scene in the game now where our character loses his mouth or some sort of thing like that, and that's already a cool idea. That's how it usually works. For my thought process is when certain things happen, I just think of it as, maybe I use that to make the game different in a way, or maybe not, but it still helps you think of things more creatively. That's just how you should definitely think for your games, in case you run into, writer's block. You know how writers have writer's block or artist blocks, or I don't know what it's called actually, something like that. But yeah, just think of certain things differently, and that's how you come up with new ideas. I dropped a new texture file into Buildbox. You see the mouth instantly changed. That's how we know it's correct. You can also change the texture for the outline, but it doesn't really do anything because it's just on the back part. It's just the outline of the character. It doesn't affect it. You could even remove that if you want to. I removed the shadows. I don't know why I do it for certain characters and certain characters I don't. I guess it just really depends how I think of it. Back to the mechanic, I click play, the cube falls down. We know why. It's because there's physics on the cube and it's set to dynamic most likely. It interacts with gravity, so that's why the cube falls down. Our character stays into place and his animation starts to play. It actually looks pretty cool. I click the character and there's 4 keyframe animations, which is incorrect. They all have similar names to how we saved the file. I just delete the last 3 and then double check if this is correct. Also check looped so that our animation loops, and click play. We forgot to change the cube from dynamic to kinematic. Click play again, and you can see character 1.4, the Nosestache Guy. He's just breathing in place, which is pretty cool. It's a little bit creepy, but I like it. It's kind of an interesting animation, only because we put the mouth on our texture. It looks like we animated the mouth, but it's just moving the 3D mesh with our keyframe animations. It's a really cool effect. Even though we did something very simple, he's just kind of like chilling there, just taking a deep breath and then blowing out. That's just how I'm envisioning it right now. That could actually be a sound effect where I'm just going. A little bit creepy, but maybe this game becomes creepy. Who knows? But we need to adjust the camera, and I want the view to be facing the character so that we can see his face. More of a front view. The direction of the game is going to be forward into the Z-axis. That's the thought process behind that. Once we have the view that we like, again, like I said, you can save specific views that you like into a spreadsheet that we know which game belongs to which game mechanic for the future. You can just refer to that for certain camera views. It's a good idea. We need to save the Buildbox file just in case it crashes. It happens. I'm not saying it happens a lot, but you don't want to lose things. Definitely save your projects. I saved this into a new folder, character 1.4, just use the same name, but just with 1.4 this time. I'm just incrementing every time I start a new character or a new project. That just makes it easier to label everything and have everything organized. All the naming stuff, naming the characters like actual names, can come later, unless you actually come up with a cool name like the Nosestache Guy. He actually can be the name for this character, and I would note that somewhere, but it's already being recorded in this video, so no issues with remembering now what the name's going to be. And if you like that, say Nosestache Guy in the comments, or just suggest a new name. That's allowed too. All right, now just hit play again to get an idea of what we're going to be doing. Since our start scene is correct with the view that we like, with the simple idle animation of the character and the cubes in place, what I did was scale the cube out to get some sort of longer platform. I used one of the custom move tools. You can press 4 on your keyboard to get this as well, or just click the 4th button. You can adjust each side manually to a custom size you like. Trying to get more of a long platform because this is going to be like a jumping mechanic. You're jumping to the next platform. That's what I thought of as I was creating this mechanic. Once you have the default platform that you like, duplicate the start scene and rename it to 1. So that creates our first level, and delete the character on this level, because otherwise the character will keep appearing infinite amount of times, because that's how randomizing the scenes work in Buildbox. Scene 1 is just going to keep repeating. We don't want to have a million of our characters. We just need to have the character on the start scene and the platform on scene 1 so that it randomizes and keeps creating the gameplay loop. So that's how this works. I click character 1.4, change the physics from none to dynamic. That way he interacts with gravity within the game. We definitely need to adjust the collision shape, because that's how our character interacts with other objects in the game based on these hitboxes. I move it up and then scale it down. This character's a little bit large because of the Nosestache, but for testing purposes, this is fine. I could even make the hitboxes a little bit smaller, but we're just gonna go with the original size for our hitboxes. I click play, and you can see he kind of just falls backwards. I don't know why. It just looks funny now because with the breathing sounds that we add to this game, it's just funny. It's just like, help me out, help me out, help me, pick me up, get me up. He's just kind of like stuck there now. I don't know about you, but that's pretty funny. This could actually be kind of like a death animation where he just falls backwards. There would be some sort of thought bubble that says something on the lines that I just said earlier. Hey, you're gonna need to help me get up, because I ain't got no arms or legs or whatever. I think I'm trying to troubleshoot this issue. Wait, this feature, I mean, so we can at least fix it. But if we wanted to keep it, we'll know how to revert back to the original settings. I actually move them in the air and adjust the collision shape just a little bit, just to see what happens if we start them at the top, kind of falls down, and then still kind of falls backwards. That's actually pretty cool. We could definitely use that at some point in this game if I do choose to expand on this idea. I change dynamic to kinematic. You can see kinematic, it stays in place, so it doesn't really interact with gravity as much. So I change it back to dynamic. That's what we want, but we just need to fix this. We just want him to face us the entire time without falling backwards. I'm constantly just adjusting the collision shape just to see if it's affecting the weight of the character, but I don't think it does anything. This would actually be a pretty good size for the collision shape for our character. We don't really need to include the Nosestache. It's just more so for decoration purposes. That just makes it better for the game, because then we can actually squeeze through different spots, even though it won't look right because the Nosestache is gonna run into things, but that could just be an effect in the game. But this is still happening, so I'm just clicking everything to see whether it would fix it. The friction's increased to 5. The bounce I decreased to 0. Even increased the mass to 10 just to see what happens, and then just revert back for everything, turn off friction cutoff, and then just revert back our collision shape, because all those changes didn't do anything to fix our issue anyways. It was just more so to troubleshoot. I remember the rotation factor was definitely something important to keep your character in place. I changed the rotation factor in the Y from 1 to 0. That didn't really do much. I changed it in the X to 0. Now he stays into place without falling backwards. That's correct. That was the fix to this. The rotation factor and the x-axis, that's what we want. But if we wanted to revert back, we know that we could just change it back to 1 at any point. That's the cool thing about recording everything you do, so you know what changes you made for certain things you fixed, but maybe you wanted to revert back to it. You also have that video note as well. Be sure to do that for your characters or anything that you do in game development. That just keeps everything organized, easier for you to remember everything and just record. Now that we have character 1.4, the Nosestache Guy, breathing in place, you can see our platforms also spawn infinite amount of times as well, which is great because that gives us an idea of what the game mechanics gonna definitely look like. This view isn't really a good view to see the next platform. That's the next thing we need to do, adjust the view so that we can actually see how far the next platform is, and we can make changes based on that. It actually looks better visually for our game mechanic. I moved the view just slightly so that we have some sort of top-down view. I zoom in. This already looks pretty cool for our game mechanic because we know we need to jump to the next platform. That's the next thing we're going to need to add. I click into character 1.4, add a touch node so that when we touch the screen, something happens. What we want to do is jump. We also add the jump node. Now when we touch the screen, the character will jump. We need to add an if collide as well, because I think in the previous character 1.3, we figured out that we need to have an if collide so that when the character lands on the platform, then we allow the player to jump. It also resets the jump counter. That's how my thought process works. I learn different things on every project and then just combine everything based on the mechanic that I'm building. There's always an improvement in every character and also in every game mechanic. That's how game development should be. You should be learning something new every time, but also improving yourself at the same time, but also understanding how everything works. If you're pretty new to game development, just learn one thing at a time and then improve upon it. That's how I've gotten to this point. If you've been watching my videos, you'll understand how my thought process has been. I connect this if collide to the touch first because we want the character to touch the platform first before we can jump. We also connect it to the reset because we have the jump limit, which is the jump counter of how many times they can jump within a session or within a touch. However to explain, I don't know. You get the point. For the jump, we need to be able to jump up, but also forward. That's why it's in the Y and the Z axis. For the jump force angular, I just put that to 0. Occasionally, I forget to click enter and just click off. You can see that if you do this, your settings don't save. Make sure to click enter. It just happens in Buildbox. It doesn't automatically save sometimes. You just re-enter your values and then press enter. You'll be fine. I probably didn't press enter here. That could be a little bit annoying. Just make sure you do it correct every time. Once we have that, we want to test the mechanic. Click play. Character 1.4, the Nosestache Guy falls down and falls through the platform. That's not supposed to happen, but that looks pretty cool. That can actually be a feature too, where you tap on the screen and he just becomes invisible or something to pass through the platform. That's another idea that I should keep notes on. That's why these videos are super helpful now, because I'm finding all these things that's happening within this game, but they're creating more ideas for me if I want to expand on this game. That's something to be very aware of as you're building your game mechanic. Remember, it doesn't have to be a bug. It could be a feature. You just have to think creatively. I think the reason for this was the cube didn't have a collision group because we added the if collide and we set that to platform. The character wasn't colliding with the cube because it wasn't set to platform as a collision group. That's something that's important in Buildbox too, that you can set things as different groups for different collisions. If you have multiple objects in a game and you only want certain things to interact with each other, that's how you separate it. Now we test it. It should work now. Character falls down, hits the platform, which is correct. We tap the screen and he jumps forward, but he's jumping towards us. That's pretty cool, actually. I just find things fascinating as I'm playtesting my games or just building it out. It's just certain things that look cool visually that I like. Honestly, this just starts with a doodle or a sketch, and then you actually get to bring the character to life. I think that's what I really like about it, is bringing your ideas to life. That's what's magical about it. It's like using your imagination as best as you can. Every little thing that you do to create the experience all comes down to the entire process of how you built the game. I honestly don't have like a plan for how this game might turn out. I just know that this is the character that I want to use, and whatever I come up with happens when I'm actually hands-on with the program. Certain things that I do that I like, how our animations turn out, because that's a big factor on how you think of your own character. There's just a lot of things to factor in, but it's cool to actually see it and then create something out of it. That's why I like building these game mechanics, because it helps me think of different things. It just helps you build that muscle in your brain over time to kind of like flex your creativity muscle. That builds and builds, and you eventually improve, even though you don't really notice while you're working. You subconsciously are improving, but you don't notice until years and years go by. Every video, you'll notice that my process is a little bit different, the way I'm explaining everything, or at least if you watch from the beginning, you'll notice that it wasn't as fluent. That's because I was a little bit rusty and I was trying to get back into the flow of things. The beginning is usually the hardest, when you're trying to get back into game development, but also learning new workflows, new frameworks, new processes, and then trying to integrate all of that into one. That's the most difficult part. But when you're actually in it and everything just kind of flows nicely, which is how it is flowing now for me, but it took a lot of time to get to this point. But I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I hope you guys are liking these videos so far. I'm enjoying it so much more now, because now it's more natural. At least that's how I feel at this moment in time. Anyways, back to the game mechanic. All right, we need to fix the jump in the Z-axis, because he was jumping forward because it's set to 5. But in order to jump forward in the opposite direction, we need to put a negative. I drag this to your characters so that we can have the camera follow the character. You can also have the camera follow the game path as well. I definitely should have a video on that to showcase the differences. I haven't gotten to that point, but we'll probably do that in some sort of future video with a future character. I changed the follow force in the Y from 1 to 0, because we don't want the camera to follow the character when he's falling down. We just want it to follow when he's jumping forward or side to side, since it's also 1 in the x-axis. Character 1.4, the Nosestache Guy, falls down, hits the platform, and we tap the screen and he jumps forward. That's correct now. But now the platform is too far. That's why we're falling into this ditch. But we're making pretty good progress on this mechanic. We need to move this platform and move it towards us. You can eyeball most of this stuff, click play, and see if you'll make the jump this time. And oh, didn't make it, but I really like how the character falls down. I don't know why. Every little thing just looks cool now. Let's test this again, and we'll move it closer to us by 0.3, and we successfully make that jump. Let's move it to 2.5 now, because we want to land directly in the middle of the platform, and almost close. You can see the next ditch was very wide. That's because we didn't adjust the endpoint just yet. We're just moving the platform. I focus on one thing at a time so that you actually know what's going on in your scenes or in your game mechanic, and it just tests as you go. But that's entirely up to you how you guys will want to do it. But for me, I need to know whatever we're working on right now. We need to resolve that first before we move on to the next task. Now that we know we're landing successfully on the platform, we need to move the endpoint closer so that our ditch isn't as wide the next time. We jump and we make that next jump. But you can see from the start scene, there's actually a huge gap compared to the gaps from scene 1. It's because we didn't change the endpoint in our start scene as well. There's 2 scene we definitely need to adjust, but I'm just adjusting the one on scene 1 at the moment, just so that we have our spawned platforms correct first. Hit play, jump to the next platform, and we didn't make that one. I moved the platform closer because we're not landing directly on top of it. For the end scene, we're just inching it a little bit closer every time. I duplicate scene 1 now and create a second scene because we want some variation with our platforms. Otherwise, it's kind of get a little repetitive seeing the same thing over and over. I duplicate the cube as well, call this moving platform, and then rename the previous cube as platform so that we can identify which one's which. With the moving platform, I need to readjust the size so that it matches our original platform. This is the importance of whole numbers, is because if you're trying to have the same dimensions for different objects, it's easier to enter in a whole number than it is to like enter in decimals. There's just a lot more to type in, but I forget to do that sometimes. I just go with the flow most of the times and create some sort of size that I like for certain things and then just go with the flow like that. But that actually makes it harder to transfer the dimensions over. But it's not really an issue. Once we have the same size, I just delete the old platform because we don't need that. Move the moving platform in the original place. This is scene 2 that we have our moving platform. So our game mechanic is going to randomize between scene 1 and scene 2. It's going to randomize the original platform. That one's kind of in place and static. It's going to randomize our second scene, which has our moving platform. That creates some variation. For the moving platform, we need to add a wave node and then click play just so you know what's going on. You can see our platform is moving from left to right, from right to left, left to right. It creates some sort of variation. I adjust the wave vector in the x-axis from 1 to 5, and you can see it's moving more spread out than it was in the previous preview. And I add a 5 in the box next to it because it gives it some randomness to how the platforms appear. That way it doesn't look the same all the time. And I jump to the next platform and definitely don't make the jump. And you can see this already creates some sort of difficulty in our gameplay because now we have to actually time our jumps based on where the positioning of the platform is. And we almost fell off the edge, but we didn't. But then we do on the next platform. So you can see we've already created some sort of difficulty in our levels with a few of the changes that we made to this game mechanic. And this already gives us an idea of how the prototype is going to be. And it already looks very different from when we first started. And I think we need to have more static platforms. So I duplicated scene 1. That way we have more of scene 1 randomizing in our scenes. That makes the game difficulty a little bit easier. That's feels a lot much nicer. But I adjust the wave vector from 5 to 3 just to see. And I think the speed is a little bit too fast. So I changed the speed from 1 to 0.5. For some reason, the preview this time had a weird preview. Sometimes you have to click restart again. And for the endpoints, I'm adjusting it to make it closer because every time we jump, it seems like we were going to fall off at some point. So now the jump is a little bit more centered. See, this game mechanics coming out pretty nicely. We already have a very good idea of how to build this. We just definitely need more randomness to our levels, but also need to fix the jump mechanic just a little bit. Otherwise, the player might feel cheated every time they tap the screen. If you're slowly not jumping in the correct location or the correct position of the platform, that's going to be kind of like cheating the player. And that's a little bit too far. And you can see with every jump, it's slowly looking like we're eventually going to not make the jump on the next platform. So that's definitely something to note for this game mechanic. But so far, it's pretty cool testing it. Now I'm just tapping the screen many times and I can still kind of jump infinite amount of times. That's because we added that if collide and didn't adjust the collision shape. And as I mentioned this before, it would be easier to adjust both of them at the same time at start. So for any character that you add or any object, just add an if collide right away, change the physics to dynamic, and then adjust the collision shape so that they're both the same size and you don't have to worry about having to do this twice. Otherwise, you're going to have to copy the values over. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it's just doing double the amount of work when you could just be doing it once. So I'm just repeatedly tapping the screen, and you can see he's just jumping all over the place. We definitely don't want that. I feel like the shape has to do a lot with how he interacts with everything. So this is just a quick prototype, so we're not really worried about the collision shape too much, but we know that's going to be an issue in the long run. So I'm looking at the start scene, and we want everything to kind of be the same so that we can get the jump mechanic to be correct. So every scene has to kind of start the same and have similar start and end positions. So that's what I'm doing here. And then just moving the character into original location, and now testing the game mechanic. And we're still kind of slipping off every time we jump forward. I think that's what I was troubleshooting here. There might have been a different solution that I should have tried, but during this moment, my thought process was to adjust the start and end and making sure the platform is in the same place. It could have been something else too. And for our if collide, I changed the affected asset to platform because we did that for start. The jump definitely seems like it's functioning correctly now that we adjusted everything to be the same on every scene. And I add a UI screen, and add a navigation button, and have a restart button for when we die. I don't think I had that in the previous characters and game mechanics because I wanted to playtest this on my device, and I had no way to, I guess, restart the level. So you kind of have to close out the app, and I didn't want to do that. So that's why this was the new thing for me to add in this game mechanic and in future game mechanics. And the restart button is on the wrong UI screen. So in the character, I add a defeated node, and then I duplicate one of the platforms and rename it to defeat, change this to red, and add it to our start scene. And I add this to an area under the platforms, and I scaled it up, and then I duplicated it on each of the scenes. So whenever we land onto the red area, that means the character would be defeated. So back into the character, we can duplicate the if collide since we already have the correct collision shape for that. And that's a tip too, is if you've already adjusted your collision shapes, you can reuse it by just duplicating the if collide. You don't have to do the adjusting again for the collision shapes. So this time, if the character collides with the defeated platform, the character will be defeated. And I was looking through the nodes because I think I forgot how to take them to a different UI screen. So I saved the project and open a new template and click space buggy and just reference what the template was and how the nodes take you to the game over screen. So we need to have a delay and an event observer in the UI, and I click the UI, and there's also an event observer here. So I go back to our project. In our UI screen, I add an event observer, and this lets Buildbox know to take us to the game over screen. That's how we get that connection point on our UI screen, and you can rename this to game over and then connect it to the game over UI that has the restart button, and then click play. Character falls through, which is incorrect. Oh, and that actually happens because in our character we duplicated the if collide, and that one has the affected asset as platform. So that's why he's disappearing, because he's actually being defeated by the platform, which is incorrect. So I changed this to none just to make sure we're correct. And then we actually want to change it to defeat. So when the character jumps off the platform, it will get defeated. And I think he got defeated, but it didn't take us anywhere because we didn't have the correct nodes. And I think I forgot what nodes to use again. So I go back to the templates. It's probably easier to export a BBasset and then just drag it into your project. That way you don't have to keep jumping back and forth between templates. Most of the time don't have BBassets to like just drop in, but maybe I'll have to create some default ones that I use. That way I don't have to jump back and forth between templates like that. So in the character, I changed the if collide affected asset to enemy, and then for the defeat collision group, I changed it to enemy. And we definitely need some more moving platforms because there's too many static platforms. So now we can't even die. And for the affected, I changed it to character, and I'm just playtesting just to see. And I think we don't have the nodes. That's why, because sometimes you can't tell what's going on. And I think that's why I'm trying to test to see if he actually gets defeated. So I add this cube right behind him for when he jumps, and you can see it disappeared, and that's correct. Now that I know that's correct, in our character, we need to add an event node. So when the character is defeated, it will take us to the game over screen. So that's what was missing. So I click play, character jumps, falls over the ledge, and you can see the restart button appears, and that's correct because we want to be able to restart the level without having to close out the app to replay and test the game again. And once we have that, for the defeated cube that we're using, I delete the mesh because we don't want that to be visible. You can if you want to. If you want to have some sort of like lava in your game, you can do that. But for the purpose of this game mechanic, we just kind of want it to be where he falls off into a ditch and then just dies. So for this cube, it has this red outline and we can scale it up so that it takes up more room. That way it's easier to just kill the character. So let's hit play again and we test. This is looking very good. And I'm just pressing restart because we're getting too many static platforms. So we're never going to die. So I jump off, falls into the ditch, and it's game over. And we click restart. And that's what we wanted. And that kind of ends the game mechanic. Since character 1.4, the 3D mesh was definitely low poly, but we definitely want it to be more smoother. I went back into Blender and clicked the body and clicked shade smooth. That's definitely something to improve your 3D meshes. If you're just making quick characters, it just looks fine doing it this way. It actually hides all your imperfections on your character. It's actually a method that I use for my future characters. But if you like that low poly look, you can keep both, entirely up to you. And I drop this in. You want to create a new asset just in case, and then just copy the subscene over to your subscene. You could also use the keyframe animation from that one as well, and then delete the old keyframe animation and subscene. Check looped, delete the new asset that you added, and we need to fix the outline again. Change it from white to black. Turn off receive shadow. You can actually keep it too, but I actually don't like the shadow in Buildbox as much. I like to create kind of like my own color shadow, and boom, we have a nice smooth shaded character for our jumping mechanic, and that completes the game mechanic for character 1.4, the Nosestache Guy. I think I have the export video. I'm not sure why it's not in here, but let's see. Oh yeah. Yep. And then to test this on our device, we go to File, go to Project Settings, add a bundle ID, click Export. I use iOS. Click Save to your folder. Click the xCode project in the middle with the white icon. Click Signing and Capabilities. Change your team. And I started just adding a value after the bundle ID. And then you go to Info, and under Bundle Display Name, you can put character 1.4. That shows up under the icon on my device. And I was trying to keep all the apps on my phone for each character. So that's why I added a value on the bundle ID. So that way, every time it installs on my phone, it's creating a new app. And it'll run to the device. And this is a screen recording from my phone of character 1.4, the Nosestache Guy. He falls on the platform. We tap to jump to the next platform, and our goal is to avoid falling off, and we have to time our taps to get to the next platform. And we can add in some enemies if we wanted to make it a little bit more difficult, or add in more moving platforms. But we have a basic idea of what this game mechanic is, and boom, he decides to just jump off and fall off the ledge. So that's the game mechanic for character 1.4, the Nosestache Guy. And that also concludes our video for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I found today's video to be very entertaining. I think more so because of the character, how we were able to create some sort of breathing sound to the animation. The animation itself looks pretty cool with his mouth moving, but also how he falls off the platforms. Different things that we did in the game mechanic, such as falling through the platform, are great ideas if I want to expand upon this. But we definitely did a lot more in this game mechanic than the previous game mechanics, which is good. That means I'm improving my own process. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Please like this video, please subscribe, and see you in the next video for character 1.5, and that's going to be the final character to finish off this character set. And I have many more characters to create, so it's going to be a pretty long journey, but it's going to be a fun one. So appreciate your time, and peace out.